Hey guys, I'm back, and I have a couple more thoughts and takeaways from being a software developer. So this will be part 2, things I learned as a software developer. So my first for today is being comfortable taking responsibility for things. Code is often less than perfect. And the more experience you get, the more you'll be working on existing code bases. And code is very rarely, if ever, perfect. Unless you're out coding things on your own as a freelancer, you're probably going to spend a decent amount of your time working on existing code bases, or tying together solutions in which things are partially or mostly already written. You'll be adding features to things. And you're going to inherit things that are less than perfect. So in order to really thrive in these sorts of environments, you have to be able to take some responsibility for some of these things that you'll be inheriting. You have to realize you're going to encounter bugs and issues and things that you're not really directly responsible for. You're going to encounter bugs and issues and other things that you aren't directly responsible for creating. But you will be responsible for addressing and fixing these things. So you can't really get caught up in, getting frustrated about problems you didn't necessarily create or inheriting someone else's issues. So you can't let yourself get held up or caught up in trying to define where the problems came from. You just have to be able to tackle them. Really, your job is as a software engineer, and engineer is a key term there. You have to be able to think about the problems, think through them, and think about some things in advance. And part of doing so is going to be taking responsibility for the code base you're working on, where it's at. And to go along with this, you have to be able to take responsibility for your own mistakes as well. In general, you're going to learn best by breaking things and learning things, taking things apart and figuring out how they work. And it's going to be okay to break things from time to time. That's going to happen. What makes that okay, though, is if you take responsibility for it and you show initiative in fixing something. It shows that you're learning. In all of this, you're going to have to be able to be honest and show some transparency as well. A lot of your job is going to be translating what you're doing. So unless, again, you're freelancing and somehow only working solo, you're going to need to be able to provide deadlines and estimates at the progress you're making and describe the things you're working on. These sorts of estimations often aren't very easy or very precise, but the best thing you can be is just honest with where you are and what you're working on. Try to help people understand the challenges you're facing and the issues you're running into, and it should be easier for everyone than to understand certain timelines and why some things might take some time and why some things might be easier or harder than others. In general, there's a bit of misunderstanding about how programming works and what tasks are hard and what tasks aren't. So if you're not honest and you don't, set expectations as you work, people are going to be able to expect you just to sort of magically do things rapidly. So you really need to be forward about communicating your goals and your deadlines and your timelines. Okay, so the next big thing is about deciphering things, trying to understand things. A lot of your job as a software developer or programmer is going to be this. And this is a wide range of things that you're going to be trying to figure out. So, from a programming standpoint, of course, you're going to be solving issues. You're going to have to be reading documentation on how to implement, technologies you're working with, how to solve problems you're working with. You're going to have to be able to do this sort of research on your own. But also, depending on the size of the team and the structure at the company you work with, or, the team you're on in general, you might have to help decipher requirements. You might have to decipher why you're solving certain problems. You want to be able to do your due diligence, as it were, to really thoroughly understand the problem you're solving before you jump right in. Otherwise, you're just going to end up wasting a whole bunch of your time implementing things probably incorrectly. And especially when you're working with older code bases and stuff, documentation, is hard, and therefore it's often pretty sparse. So you're going to have to spend a decent amount of time just sifting through things and learning how they work. You might get some conflicting requirements too when you start to look into things and understand requirements and you're looking at code. Certain things might be implemented different ways. So you just need to be good about communicating, understanding the code logic versus the business logic, and really just working with the team you're part of. What can make programming as a career and a job frustrating isn't necessarily because what you're working on is technically impossible. It's that what you're working on is misunderstood. So the communication of the requirement down to you, the developer, is going to maybe be missing some details that you need to actually complete it. And on the flip side, your communication of the issues that you're facing might not make it back up to the people that can answer those questions. They're not going to understand the issues that you're running into. So again, I think this really all just goes back on communication. Software development and programming is actually a very communication-heavy career. If you're not communicating well, you're probably wasting a lot of time. It's not even so much that you're going to be in meetings all day or you're not going to be coding at all. But you do have to be able to communicate the parts of your job to people who might not understand them, who might not have expertise in them. So my last point is about training. And this is really something in software development that is everyone's responsibility. Now, a lot of people are going to disagree with that, but I think it's important to think about how you got to where you were. Someone probably taught you the things that you know. You probably read tutorials online. You probably benefited from good documentation or someone taking some time to teach you what they know. So even though you might not be in a formal teaching position, it's still your responsibility to make sure that the things you're doing are understandable. It's going to be in your benefit if you take a little bit of time here and there to help someone understand the thing that you're working on or to train them on how to do it. Eventually, you're going to want to progress. You're going to want to move on to other things. But if there's no one that can perform the parts of your job that you're doing today, you're not going to be able to do that. You want to be able to progress in your career, not just slowly gain more and more responsibility and get bogged down. So try to take some responsibility for training others or investing in others the way that people invested in you and got you to where you are.